Hello and welcome to this session. The session is going to talk about K-mean clustering. As you know, the machine learning algorithms can be broadly classified into two categories: supervised and unsupervised learning. There are other categories also like semi-supervised learning and reinforcement learning, but most of the algorithms are classified as supervised or unsupervised learning. The difference between them happens because of the presence of target variable. K-means clustering is the most popular unsupervised learning algorithm. It is used when we have unlabeled data, which is data without defined categories or group. K-means algorithm works iteratively to assign each data point to one of the K groups based on the feature that are provided. Data points are clustered based on feature similarity. This is the introduction part of K-means clustering. This is very popular unsupervised learning, and also in K-means data points are clustered based on feature similarity. So let's have a look. What is K-mean clustering exactly? K-mean clustering is an unsupervised learning used to group the unlabeled dataset into different clusters or subsets. It is centroid-based algorithm. In centroid-based algorithm or clustering, clusters are represented by a centroid. The K-means clustering algorithm uses an iterative procedure to deliver a final result. So the question is, how does K-mean clustering work? The algorithm iterates between two steps. Step 1, data assignment. Step 2, centroid update. In section 1, in this step, each data point is assigned to its nearest centroid, which is based on the square Euclidean distance. Step 2, centroid update. In this step, the centroids are recomputed and updated. This is done by taking the mean of all data points assigned to that centroids cluster. In order to conclude the clustering or K-mean clustering steps, we have to describe it as brief. Section 1, data assignment step. In this step, each centroid defines one of the cluster. In this step, each data point is assigned to its nearest centroid, which is based on a squared Euclidean distance. So, if Ci is the collection of centroids in set C, then each data point is assigned to a cluster based on minimal Euclidean distance. Step 2, centroid update setup or step. In this step, the centroids are recomputed and updated. This is done by taking the mean of all data points assigned to that centroid cluster. The algorithm then iterates between step 1 and step 2 until a stopping criterion is met. A stopping criteria means no data point change the cluster. The sum of the distances is minimized, or some maximum number of iterations is reached. The algorithm is guaranteed to converge to a result. Let's have a look to one example. Suppose we have two variables x1 and x2. Scatter plot 1. Okay, two variables. Figure 1. Let's take the value of k, that is the number of predefined cluster, to be 2. For example, k equal to 2. So here we will be grouping our data into two clusters. Random k points need to be chosen to form the clusters. No restriction on the selection of random k points can be from inside the data and outside as well. So here we are considering 2 points as k points, which are not part of our data set shown in the figure 2. The next step is to assign each data point of the data set in the scatter plot to its closest k points. This will be done by calculating Euclidean distance between each point with k points and draw a median between both the centroids shown in figure 3. We can clearly observe that the points to the left of the red line are near to k1 or the blue centroid, and the points to the right of the red line, this is the red line, are near to k2 or orange centroid, figure 4. As we need to find the closest point, so we will repeat the process by choosing a new centroid. To choose the new centroid, we will compute the center of gravity of this centroid and will find new centroid as figure 5. Now we need to reassign each data point to a new centroid. For this, we have to repeat the same process of finding a median line. The median will be like figure 5 here. Finally, after some step, the two final clusters will be shown in figure 9. Now it's time to choose the number of clusters in k-mean algorithm. The k-mean algorithm depends upon finding the number of clusters and data labels for a predefined value of k. To find the number of clusters in the data, we need to run the k-mean clustering algorithm for different value of k and compare the result. We should choose the optimal value of k that gives us the best performance. There are different techniques available to find the optimal value of k. The most common technique is the elbow method. The elbow method plots the value of the cost function produced by different value of k. The below diagram shows how the elbow method works. We can see that if k increases, average distortion will decrease. Then each cluster will have fewer constituent instances, and the instances will be closer to their respective centroids. However, the improvement in average distortion will decline as k increases. The value of k at which improvement in distortion decline the most is called the elbow, at which we should stop dividing the data into future clusters. After the elbow points find, for example 3, you have to stop for the future cluster. The next step is to apply k-means in Python. So in order to do that, you have to import the library like the previous classification or clustering techniques. You have to import the library. We use pandas, numpy, and matplotlib for working data structure and plot the figures. For k-mean clustering, we use k-mean class here from scikit-learn.cluster. Let's run this cell and we can see that it is successfully run it. Now the next step, we will use k-mean clustering algorithm on mall customer on label data to the mall customer to create groups of the customer based on annual spending and spending score assigned by the mall. Let's read this data set. From this data set, you can see that we have 200 sample together with 5 columns. The columns, when you put data frame.head, we have shown 5 rows from customer ID to spending score. Now it's time to explore the data analysis. As I mentioned to you, we have 200 total training example without any label to indicate which customer belong to the group. So we are going to use annual income and spending score to find the cluster in data. Annual income and spending score to find the cluster in data. Note that spending score is from 1 to 100, which is assigned by the mall based on customer behavior and spending nature. We are going to use annual income and spending score column only. So we choose the column 3 and 4 for the next step. Here I selected column annual income and column spending score. And let's run it. You can see the x-axis is annual income and the y-axis is spending score. This is the total unlabeled mall customer data. Since we are going to use annual income and spending score column only, let's create two-dimensional array of this column for further use. So let's run this cell, and this is the two-dimension column for this one. The X bracket 5 shows first 5 record only. And the next step is to choose the number of cluster. For choosing the number of cluster, let's try to verify these with elbow method techniques, which I discussed in previous session. Using the elbow method to find the optimal cluster of or number of cluster. Let's use 1 to 11 as range of cluster. 1 to 11 as range of cluster. From the above elbow plot, it is clearly obvious that clustering scores slow down after 5 number of cluster. So we can use K5 for future or further analysis. This is the elbow method. I told you how to choose the accurate number of cluster. So now it's time to focus on K-mean clustering. Compute cluster center and predict cluster index for each sample. Since K equal to 5, we will get the cluster index from 0 to 4 for every data point in our dataset. We use the predict function here and print the cluster that was chosen for each data. Number of data points in each cluster is equal for cluster 0 and for cluster 1. Let's run and you will see that this one is spread value that we got from this step. After you show the data frame, the number of data points in each cluster, you will see number of data points in each cluster. We have this cluster, data points is here, and here is total number of row and column that we have. The next step is to plot the centroid and cluster with different color to visualize how K-mean algorithm has grouped the data. In this code, we did the same procedure, and you can see very accurate and nice figure or plots based on annual income and spending score. We have 4 clusters. The centroid of each cluster is inside their cluster. Let's have a look to inner working. So now it's time to discuss about inner working. Using below code, we can visualize the inner working of K-means algorithm. For instance, in order to store centroid X coordinated, we put C underline X equal to bracket close and open. This function will plot the path taken by centroid. And we have here, if there are 5 clusters, then first set contains initial cluster coordinate and then k-means loop will keep appending new cluster coordinate for each iteration. At the end, you reset coordinate array to avoid continuous line. This is the function that we designed for this plot. Now it's time to plot it, visualize it. Now random initialization of centroids for annual income, and later on we use k-mean loop of assignment and move centroid step. So here we put compute cluster centers and predict cluster index for each sample. The next step, we put adding 1 for initial set of centroid. So using below code, we can visualize the inner working of k-means. I will explain in 4 steps how to design this nice visualized figure. Here I want to describe the inner workings to visualize the k-means algorithm. To start with, we will define the random initialization of centroids. You can see in below plot that initialize centroid with original data without any cluster. This is the random centroid. The next step, we will run the k-mean algorithm only for one iteration. You see here, iteration. One assignment and move centroid step. And plot the new position of centroid. Notice how centroid position changes and cluster started to form around it. In step 2, we will run the k-means algorithm for 2 iterations. Notice how data points are reassigned from one cluster to another as centroid position change. Similarly, at the end, we run the k-mean algorithm for 6. You can see here, iteration 5, and for 6 iteration where we get the final location of centroid and associated cluster. They move until they reach to the best location as a centroid.